martyrdom. Oh.
Harry Tyson Moore was an African-American teacher, founder of the first branch of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People in Brevard County, Florida, and a pioneer leader of the civil rights movement in Florida and the southern United States. Harry T. Moore and his wife, Harriette Vyda Sims Moore, were killed by Ku Klux Klan bombers who blew up the Moores' home on Christmas Eve 1951. The Moores were the first NAACP members to be murdered for their civil rights activism. Moore has been called the first martyr of the 1950s era civil rights movement. Ralph Waldo Ellison was an American novelist, literary critic, scholar, and writer. He is best known for his novel Invisible Man, which addresses many of the social and intellectual issues facing African Americans early in the 20th century, published in 1952. James Arthur Baldwin was an American novelist, essayist, playwright, poet, and social critic. His best-known work was his first, Go Tell It on the Mountain, published in 1953. The novel examines the role of the Christian church in the lives of African Americans, both as a source of repression and moral hypocrisy, and as a source of inspiration and community. Brown v. Board of Education was a landmark United States Supreme Court case in which the court declared state laws establishing separate public schools for black and white students to be unconstitutional. The Citizens Councils, also known as the White Citizens Councils, were an associated network of American white supremacist organizations. The first was formed on July 11, 1954. Charles Coles Diggs Jr. was an African-American politician from the U.S. state of Michigan. Elected to the United States House of Representatives in 1955, he was elected the first chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus. George W. Lee was an African-American civil rights leader, minister, and entrepreneur. He was a vice president of the Regional Council of Negro Leadership and head of the Belzoni, Mississippi branch of the NAACP. He was murdered on May 7, 1955. Less than a month after delivering an important speech, a convertible pulled alongside Lee's car just before midnight. An unidentified assailant fired 3 shotgun blasts, at least one aimed at his head, and he died shortly after. Lamar Smith, a 63-year-old farmer and World War I veteran, was a voting rights activist and a member of the Regional Council of Negro Leadership. On August 2nd, he had voted in the primary and helped get others out to vote. There was a runoff primary scheduled for August 23rd. On August 13th, Smith was at the courthouse helping other black voters to fill out absentee ballots so they could vote in the runoff without exposing themselves to violence at the polls. He was shot to death in front of the courthouse in Brookhaven, Lincoln County, in broad daylight. Although Noah Smith fled the scene covered in blood, an all-white jury found him not guilty. Emmett Louis Till was an African-American boy who was murdered in Mississippi at the age of 14 after reportedly flirting with a white woman. Till was from Chicago, Illinois, visiting his relatives in Money, Mississippi, in the Mississippi Delta region, when he spoke to 21-year-old Carolyn Bryant, the married proprietor of a small grocery store there. Several nights later, Bryant's husband Roy and his half-brother J.W. Millam went to Till's great-uncle's house. They took the boy away to a barn where they beat him and gouged out one of his eyes before shooting him through the head and disposing of his body in the Tallahatchie River. His body was weighed down with a 70-pound cotton gin fan tied around his neck with barbed wire. 3 days later, Till's body was discovered and retrieved from the river. Emmett Till's body was returned to Chicago. His mother, who had raised him mostly by herself, insisted on a public funeral service with an open casket to show the world the brutality of the killing. The open coffin funeral held by Mamie Till Bradley exposed the world to more than her son Emmett Till's bloated, mutilated body. Her decision focused attention not only on American racism and the barbarism of lynching, but also on the limitations and vulnerabilities of American democracy. Tens of thousands attended his funeral or viewed his casket, and images of his mutilated body were published in black-oriented magazines and newspapers, rallying popular black support and white sympathy across the U.S. Intense scrutiny was brought to bear on the condition of black civil rights in Mississippi, with newspapers around the country critical of the state. Although initially local newspapers and law enforcement officials decried the violence against Till and called for justice, they soon began responding to national criticism by defending Mississippians, which eventually transformed into support for the killers. The trial attracted a vast amount of press attention when an all-white, all-male jury acquitted Bryant and Millam of kidnapping and murder in September. The verdict shocked observers across the country and around the world. And when, mere months later, the men openly admitted to Look magazine that they had in fact mutilated and murdered Till, the outcry was so intense, and the reaction of Till's devastated family so dignified, that it lit a spark that helped ignite the modern civil rights movement. The Montgomery Bus Boycott, a seminal event in the U.S. civil rights movement, was a political and social protest campaign against the policy of racial segregation on the public transit system of Montgomery, Alabama. The campaign lasted from December 1st, 1955, when Rosa Parks, an African-American woman, was arrested for refusing to surrender her seat to a white person, to December 20th, 1956. This was when a federal ruling, Browder v. Gale, took effect and led to a United States Supreme Court decision that declared the Alabama and Montgomery laws requiring segregated buses to be unconstitutional. Many important figures in the civil rights movement took part in the boycott, including Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. and Ralph Abernathy. Autherine Juanita Lucy was the first black student to attend the University of Alabama in 1956. 4 years earlier, she enrolled as a graduate student with the help of the NAACP. Initially, the university attempted to get her to leave by refusing to allow her into dormitories and dining halls. On her third day of classes, a hostile mob assembled to prevent her from going to class. This led the school to suspend her, and when she filed a suit against the administrators, they used that as reason to expel her. It would not be until 1980 that the University of Alabama overturned her expulsion, and today the university has named an endowed scholarship in her honor and unveiled a portrait of her in the student union overlooking the most trafficked spot on campus. The Southern Christian Leadership Conference is an African American civil rights organization. SCLC was closely associated with its first president, Martin Luther King Jr. The SCLC had a large role in the American Civil Rights Movement. The Little Rock Nine were a group of African American students enrolled in Little Rock Central High School in 1957. Their enrollment was followed by the Little Rock Crisis, in which the students were initially prevented from entering the racially segregated school by Orville Faubus, the governor of Arkansas. They then attended after the intervention of President Eisenhower. Bethel Baptist Church in the Collegeville neighborhood of Birmingham, Alabama, served as headquarters from 1956 to 1961 for the Alabama Christian Movement for Human Rights. The church buildings were bombed on 3 separate occasions: on December 25, 1956, June 29, 1958, and December 14, 1962. Clara Shepard Luper was a civic leader, retired schoolteacher, and a pioneer leader in the American Civil Rights Movement. She is best known for her leadership role in the 1958 Oklahoma City sit-in movement. Luper continued desegregating hundreds of establishments in Oklahoma and was active on the national level during the 1960s movements. Motown is an American record company founded by Berry Gordy Jr. on January 12, 1959 in Detroit, Michigan. Motown played an important role in the racial integration of popular music by achieving a crossover success. The Greensboro sit-ins were a series of nonviolent protests in Greensboro, North Carolina in 1960. This led to the Woolworth department store chain reversing its policy of racial segregation in the southern United States.